Do you have a system in place to make your podcast run like clockwork? Joining me in this episode is Dolly DeLong, the host of the Systems and Workflow Magic podcast. In this episode, you're going to hear how systems have helped Dolly run her podcast and family photography business while also being present for her family. Dolly creates intentional, strategic systems that support successful launches and empower entrepreneurs to maintain momentum afterwards. I'm Alison Fraser. You're listening to Women Who Podcast. Let's dive into it. Dolly, I'm so excited to have you on to help podcasters get to grips with all the systems that can help them with their own show. So welcome on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Can you tell us how you got into systems yourself? Because I know that podcasting is one thing that you do in your life. And I guess that systems has made your life so much more easy.
Yes. Okay, so it was kind of like an accidental thing that came into my life. We all know the year 2020 happened, that like the year that must not be named. When that happened, it kind of forced me to pivot within my business. My background is so I have two sides to my business. One side is family photography. So I was just primarily photographing families, but then March 2020 happened, and where I'm from, the local government was like, you're not allowed to leave. If we find you working outside photographing, you will be fined. And the avid rule follower I am, I'm like, I will follow all the rules. So, just tell me what to do, I'll do it. I don't want to make anybody mad at me. So I was at home and I was trying to figure out, okay, I need to figure out a way to have a different stream of income, because while I wait for photography to open back up again. And I was forced to think, what am I good at that other people ask me advice for? And that is organizing the back end of my own business, because I had been running the show on still to this day, I'm running the show on my own. I'm still a family photographer, but now I'm a systems and workflow educator, and I try to work at least between 20 to 25 hours a week max. Not because I'm like, oh, I just want to work that much. It's because I have children at home and I'm balancing out being married, having children, being a caretaker. I'm balancing out life. And so that's when the whole systems and workflow doors opened up for me, and I didn't know what to call it. So I just started taking steps and marketing myself as a systems and workflow educator. And it just started in 2020, and it's been growing steadily since. And then in 2021, that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to start marketing as a podcaster on the Systems and Workflow Magic podcast. So that's when my podcast started. And really, it's been building a lot of traction since then.
Would you be able to do both businesses and raise a family if you didn't have systems in place?
Oh no. Definitely not. I mean, if I didn't want to have any type of relationship with my husband or children or anything, that definitely, but then I would miss out on what is most important for me, and that's my family and getting to know my boys. So I always have to remind myself, because Allison, I don't know if you know this about me. I don't know if you feel this for yourself, but I love what I do and I tend to be a workaholic. And so I have to be reminded, it sometimes feels like on a weekly basis, what is the priority? Why are you working? And I know I'm working for my family, for my family unit, for a better future, not the other way around. So I still, listeners, I still struggle with this. I love what I do. And if I could, sometimes I'm like, wow, I wish I could just work 20 hours a day, just the way I feel my brain is firing. But because I have some foundational systems in place, I'm able to do 2 to 3 hour work days and I'm still getting a lot done. It's not like I have to remind myself I'm in a marathon, not a race. And I'm still gaining traction slowly over time, and I'm still able to pay myself, and I'm still able to, like, meet my own personal goals that I have set for myself. So, hopefully that answers the question.
You mentioned just before about putting foundations in place.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what those look like?
Yeah, definitely. So, one definite foundation that has helped me a lot ever since the beginning of being just a photographer is having a good system for when I get inquiries in. So, something that I noticed that a lot of photographers struggle with, and now I'm noticing not just photographers, but business owners in general. They say, "Oh, I really want a lot of inquiries." And then when people contact them, there's like this lapse of time where there's no communication between the business owner and the inquiry because the business owner doesn't have any foundational systems set up. And that's something that I really took charge of early on in my business of making sure, okay, if somebody does contact me for the photography side of my business, what email should be automated out? How can I utilize my CRM, my client relationship management tool? And right now it's Dubsado to work it for my advantage. And it's because I can't live beside my computer 24/7. I want to make sure I'm staying top of mind to these clients. I want to make sure that they're getting the information that they need, but then also I have time to respond, but then they are getting that instant gratification of, "Okay, I got my answer from contacting her, and she's staying top of mind." So, that was one foundational system I definitely put in place, and I highly recommend listeners, if you run any type of business, to have a really good contact form process from the get-go and map it out. I encourage listeners to map it out. When somebody contacts you, what do you want that process to look like? Do you want them to get an automated email right away? Do you want to send them within the email? Here's my I don't even know what to call it, but this is my secret sauce for my contact form. Whenever somebody fills out my contact form through Dubsado, they instantly get a thank you page with just like a little blurb of, "Hey, thank you for filling out my contact form." And there's an embedded video in it. It's very generic and it's thanking them. So that way they're not only seeing my face, but they're hearing my voice and they know, hey, I need to go to my confirmation, to my inbox to check email number one from Dolly. And then in email number one, which is automated, they're getting a price guide, they're getting next steps, so they're being pointed to my website so I can generate more traffic to my website. And then the second part of that secret sauce is I send them a personal video the next business day or whenever I'm at my computer. So that way they are thinking of me not only right away with a thank you page and with the email, but also with that personalized video. And I I should have looked at the stats for this, but literally 75% of the time, I get bookings because of that personalized video.
Wow, that does sound like a lot of work, but I know that you have to put in a lot of work at the beginning and then
Yeah.
it just pays off because you're not having to do those emails straight away afterwards.
Yes. The so yes, that's totally right. That there is work that you will need to do. So listeners, if you're like, okay, well, how can I set this up for myself? Okay, so first things first, look at let's say it's one service that you're offering. Okay, so when a person finds you on your website, wants to contact you, what does that process look like? Determine when they hit your submit form, what do you want to happen then? Okay, do you want them to get an email from you? Do you want to manually respond? I would say have an automated message go straight to them so they know what to expect from you. And then and that literally like that setup will take time. I don't know how much time, but for me it took me like maybe half an hour to 45 minutes to set up that initially. And then from here on out, whenever somebody fills out my contact form, they're getting that within seconds. But the part that takes time is when I get a notification, hey, you have a new inquiry about family photography. And then I need to, well, I always wait until I'm like at like a quiet part of my day because I do have children in the household. I wait and I know my clients really well. They're normally moms who are contacting me. And so if I'm not wearing makeup or haven't done my hair, I know they won't judge me because they're moms and they get it. And so they just want to ask me questions about family photography. So what I've done is I just open up my computer really fast and open up Loom, which is a free app you can use for up to 5 minutes. And it's spelled LOOM. And I just send a video of myself saying, for example, Allison, thank you so much for filling out my contact form. I'm so excited about working with you for a family photography session. Be sure to check that email I sent you. Here's what it looks like. I'm literally recording a video of myself showcasing the email. I'm free September 12th, and this is the location I recommend. So I just like make sure it's personalized to fit you. I say your name, and I'm like, I'm so excited about meeting your son and like getting to know him and getting to know you guys. I know that you haven't been had professional photos done, and I'm really excited about this potential session with you. So I just try to make it as personal as possible, under 5 minutes. And then I send it off. It's imperfect. Sometimes my sons will come in and scream, and I'm like, I have a 5-year-old. Sorry about that. And like I said earlier, a lot of my clients hire me off the spot based off of the video because they're like, wow, you're a real person. You're a mom. And because I just have gotten to know my clients over time. So I know that they appreciate the realness and the authenticity. So I want to encourage listeners like, hey, like the beginning system can be automated, but then if you are wanting to develop, you don't have to be best friends with all your inquiries, but you should be personable. And like, I would highly recommend sending a personalized video and letting them know, hey, these are your next steps. I look forward to meeting with you. That will make you stand out in a very saturated market.
Mm-hmm. And injecting your own personality into it, as you say, it makes you look and sound like a real person because you are. And I know when you're looking at websites, initially to find services like yours, it can be hard to choose between people because they all look the same.
They do. Yes. And they all sound like a lot of them sound the same too. Like apparently all of us like to drink coffee and sit and be cozy with our dogs. I feel like I read that over and over again. So so you think, are these all the same type of person? And so it's really important to me to, I don't know, to send over that personalized video because some people might be like, wow, this is too much energy, or wow, like there's not a connection or something else. So I'd rather them from the get-go feel very comfortable with working with me.
Cool. So that's sorting out client inquiries, having automation, but also things that you do on the fly. What about for your podcast? What systems and workflows are working to get your podcast out each week?
Yes. Okay. I love talking about this because this has been a game changer for my business in that it's helped me stay consistent because I know one of my goals for myself when I started my podcast in 2021 was I want it to be consistent and I don't want to just have like 5 episodes and then I fall off the face of the planet and that's it. I wanted to develop a consistent marketing strategy for myself. That's how I use my podcast, as my top of funnel marketing strategy so that people can get to know me over time. And so what I've done is I've utilized, again, Dubsado. I highly recommend anyone who is a podcaster leaning into either your scheduling platform, your CRM platform. I know HoneyBook, you can do this. I know in Dubsado, you can do this. But just leading into a system that you feel comfortable using and that is fairly understandable for your podcast guest to use as well. But here's how I use Dubsado. From the get-go, I decide ahead of time normally like once a quarter. Okay, I look at my calendar. I'm like, okay, this is when I am going to record podcasts, whether it be having guests on the podcast or solo episodes. I'm going to have a week of just batching. I look at my schedule and because I only work 2 to 3 hours a day, I have to optimize as many like the afternoon nap puzzle as much as possible because that's when my son naps. And so I'm like, okay, when he naps, this is when I'm going to get my work done. Or like when my other son is in kindergarten now, I can work in the mornings. And so I look at my schedule ahead of time. I know my schedule and I block that off. And then I send out a scheduler to my potential guests who have inquired, and they schedule based off of my schedule. I wish I was at a point where I could just schedule out podcasts whenever, but it has to be at a certain time, again, every quarter of the year for me. And then on the backside of those schedulers, I make sure to attach reminder emails to my guests. Like you did this really well with your podcast, Allison. I got, which I really appreciated this about you. I got 3 reminders about our interview and how and it came with a link to the recording studio, and that's something that is so helpful for guests because that way I'm not digging through my email and second guessing, did she send me or did I save it? And that's something I love that you did. And so that's something I'm going to share with listeners. If you have a podcast, then try to make it as easy as possible for your guests. So if you are recording in Zoom or if you are recording in Zencaster or Riverside, I use Riverside. So I just create links within Riverside and I send those links in an email once they've scheduled out their podcast interview with me. And again, I have this all set up on automation on the back end. So I don't have to go back and forth with podcast guests, and it's very streamlined and it's very easy. And I feel like I overkill it a little, but I just want to make sure that when they schedule their appointment, they get a appointment confirmation, they get their Riverside link, and then they get an automated email with like, I guess, like asking for their headshots, asking for their bio, asking for any freebies they want to submit to promote on the podcast, asking what they want to talk about so that I can format their questionnaire for the podcast. So I'm trying to make it as easy as possible for them and for me in the planning stages. And then I send another email to remind them about their interview. And then I send another 24-hour reminder. So it's all, again, I had to map that out ahead of time. It did take time, but it's all done now. And it makes my podcasting workflow so much easier. And I don't have time to go back and forth with people through email, not because I don't have time for you. It's just I literally have no time. And I try to value efficiency as much as possible. And so that's something that has helped me stay consistent with my own podcasting journey.
Thanks so much for your kind praise, Dolly, because I think that's pretty much the only system and workflow I have actually in place.
Well, I love it. I'm really impressed by it. And I've never used, I've heard of Calendly, but I was like looking at it, I was like, this is really nice. And so anyways, I like your system that you set up.
Thanks. And with Calendly also, you can have it to send to myself as well as a reminder, which I also love because I'm not always looking at my calendar. And so when I get a reminder like 4 days out, I'm chatting with Dolly on Tuesday. I'm so excited, because we booked this months ago. It feels like. Yeah. So I'm like, yay, I'm getting to finally see Dolly.
Yes. I remember because I also got that email from you from Calendly, and I've also been on summer break because you and I were talking like, okay, like let's brush up on our interviews because like both of us had taken a little time off because I'm guessing, are you also on holiday? I'm on holiday.
I took a holiday. I live in New Zealand where it's currently winter. It's not a holiday here, but I took a long holiday back to the UK. So
gotcha. Well, it's summer here where I live, and it's right before kindergarten starts for my son. And so I purposefully batch recorded all of my podcast episodes in May. And I've been off from, nobody would know this, but I've been off from June and July. And now I'm back talking to, I'm like, wow, I get to like talk to somebody about a podcast. And I'm glad you brought up like brushing up our podcast interview skills because it's a very true thing.
Yeah. And I guess that's another thing how systems and workflows can help, because as you say, your podcast has still been coming out, but you've not been doing the work.
Yeah.
You've already done it.
I've already done it. It did take like you mentioned earlier, there is that time commitment of batching out the podcast episodes. And I don't edit my podcast episodes. I have an editor who does that ahead of time. So I have mapped out a system for that team. And so they know that I like to have my podcast episodes come out every Monday. And so they try to edit whatever magic they do that magic. And I appreciate that it comes out. And so it's all ready to go and publish on every Monday. All I had to do was show up and do the batch recording. And then I do, on the flip side, after every recording I quickly do graphics within Canva. So I have templates. This is a bonus point for any podcaster who's like, what about how to market your podcast? Do you have a marketing team? My answer is I am the marketing team. So what I do is I quickly go into Canva. I have templates already laid out. I don't create from scratch. I don't have time to create from scratch. So I just quickly batch out graphics based off of the podcast episode. And then I schedule those out either in Instagram or Pinterest, and I send them off to the guest so that they could also utilize them. And again, I just pre-schedule everything out, and it's really weird. I did this all within the month of May, and I was able to essentially take June and July off.
Did you have to outsource any childcare because you were saying you only have like a small amount of time, getting all that work done take time?
Yes, I did. We have a sitter who comes in once a week. And so I feel like a powerhouse for that 5 hours that she comes in. And I'm like, I'm going to get so much done. And I do. I end up getting so much done. But I definitely am so happy about the school year starting again, because that's going to open up a lot more free time for me to get more things done. But I just wanted to be transparent with the listeners. Like, if you're like, well, should I hire out a marketing team? How do I like market my podcast? Honestly, I try to keep everything as lean as possible. And when I map out my episodes, I also am mapping out, okay, how do I want to market this? And I try to do them all at the same time so that my mind can be a little bit clearer during the summer holiday break for me. Hopefully that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there a system or workflow that doesn't exist that you think would make your life so much more productive?
Oh my goodness. Oh, this question. I've never if there was like a way, this is never going to happen because we can't create time. If there was a way to go back in time and work even more, like create more time, that would be awesome. Honestly, I can't think of anything right off the top of my head. I'll have to chew on that question. That's a really good question.
I'm sorry for throwing that at you.
No, that's actually really good. I bet there is a system and workflow for this. I can't think of anything right now, but I'll be chewing on that in the back of my head.
What other systems and workflows do you use in your podcast? Because I know we've mentioned the scheduling of guests and having workflows for email reminders. And you've got your own kind of workflow, I suppose, whether it comes to you've done your interviews or other episodes for your podcast and you send them to your editing team. So I guess that's a workflow in itself.
Yes. So how I carry that or execute that out. So if listeners are like, okay, so when you hand off your episodes, what happens? So I hand off the episodes, and I try to decide now if you have one editor or a VA that you're working with, decide on one location to communicate, because if you communicate with them in Instagram DMs and then on Facebook Messenger and then through text and then through email, it'll all get lost and feel very scattered. So decide early on how you're going to stay communicative and just keep it in one place. And I do that through Slack with my podcast editor. Actually, they're the ones that told me we're going to communicate through Slack. And I was like, okay. I was very very wary of taking on another app on my plate because I get very overwhelmed with adding another tech tool. Even though I love systems, I love workflows, but I try to keep everything as simple as possible for me. But Slack has been a game changer for communication because if you're not too familiar with it, and I'm still learning it, I look at it as little channels that each channel it just talks about one topic. And so for me and my podcast production team, they have my overall umbrella of the Systems and Workflow Magic podcast. And then within that, they have little categories of what we need to talk about, like different episodes. And so that keeps everything organized for our brains. And they tag me if they have specific questions. And those tags normally get emailed to me. So I get notified, and that's really helpful. And so I let them know ahead of time, hey, episodes 137 to 140 are recorded, and I sent them off to you. And if you're wondering, well, how do you send them to them, Dolly? I organize it within Google Drive, so that's free. And I have a master folder on Google Drive, and then I share that within them. And in this master Google Drive folder, I named it the Systems and Workflow Magic Podcast, like master folder. And then within that, we have like subcategories like episodes, audio, trailers, ads. And then they know where to click. So I have an organizational system. We've gone over it and it works for us. And so they go in there, they get the episodes, they edit them, and then they pre-post it to my podcasting platform. And then they let me know when it's scheduled out. And then I go in, another system I go in, and then I decide, okay, this is going to be my post podcast marketing system. And I feel like I'm saying the word system so much, Allison, but I wanted listeners to know, like, if you're a podcast host and you're looking for a more streamlined way to stay organized with your VA or your editor, decide early on how you want that handoff to look like and how you want it needs to be as streamlined as possible, because if there are any bottlenecks or if any, I don't know, just bottlenecks is the best way to describe it, you're going to stop yourself from being consistent, or it's, I don't know, if something comes in the way. Does that make sense? I just try to make everything as easy as possible for both ends, so we are staying consistent every single week.
Yeah, that consistency I think is key, because you say, you've got Slack, that's how you communicate. Your episodes, that your work goes into the Google Drive, their work goes into the Google Drive. So, and then you get that notification when your episode's been scheduled. So you can go and do, the next stage of your workflow.
Exactly.
So, it does seem, it feels to me quite seamless. And I think most of us probably have our own way of doing things, but I guess so long as we're doing it in the same way each time, that makes it easy for us.
Yeah. The beautiful thing is when you're working with even a VA for 5 hours a week who's doing one specific task for you, if you start off doing the task and then you can better train your VA or the editor because you know how it goes. And I don't know, I highly recommend really truly getting to know nailing out a workflow that works for you so that you can better train your VA, because not everyone can read your mind, what's going on in your head. And there's always that, I've noticed this, that people just want to hire out somebody right away and then they automatically know how everything works in their business. And I'm always like, no, it's going to take a long time. give them like 30 days, 60 days, like a period to train them so that they can get used to your processes, because they probably are, if they're a VA or an OVM, they're probably balancing other types of processes too. And you need to just give them lots of grace. And so it's taken me years to hire out like 3 contractors for my business. And I know people love jumping in and hiring all the things out right away, but I am just very slow and meticulous, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. But I finally, like, it's taken me a year or 2 to find my groove with my podcast editor, and I am very happy that we took our time.
Mm. I actually do all my own editing, so I have a workflow too. So, and I'll share it with you. I'll share that with you, Dolly, because in case someone else thinks, oh yeah, that's, that might be how I could do things going forward.
Yeah.
So at the end of this interview, once we've stopped recording, it then processes in Zoom. And once it's processed in Zoom, I then open up the script, which is how I edit my podcast. And I start a new project in there and get this interview transcribed. And I do that straight away because then I know it's done, ready for me to go in and do the edits. I might not necessarily have the time to do the editing now. I won't, because it's almost time, to get my son up ready for school and go to work and all that. But then I know that bit it can take a little bit of time to do that transcription, but I know it's done. Mm-hmm. And then I save the audio file and the transcript into Google Drive and also onto an external hard drive because I like to back it up.
Just in case.
Just in case. But yeah, I have a Google Drive folder for my podcast, and I have folders within that folder for each episode, and then just load all of the things in there, like the raw audio file, the edited audio file, the intro, outros that I record, the completed episode, the transcript, because then I can access it wherever I am, not just from my laptop.
That's beautiful. I love that so much. And think about in the future, hopefully, if you ever get to a point you're like, okay, I think I'm ready to hand this off. It's all there, and you can easily train somebody just to do it.
Mm. Well, fingers crossed we get there.
You will. I know you will.
The reason why I do the Google Drive is last year I was having laptop problems and I had no laptop for 8 weeks.
Oh.
And
that is so stressful.
It's so stressful.
Yeah.
So I couldn't do anything with episodes that I'd already recorded and not put on Google Drive. It was when that happened, I was like, man, I should be using Google Drive because then I can do things like on another computer.
Yes. Oh, that's right. Exactly. Oh, well, I'm glad it all got sorted out for you.
Thanks. But yeah, I think you learn as you go, don't you? Like you learn from not necessarily mistakes, but when things don't go quite to plan, how can I improve on this so it doesn't happen again or make the most of that situation?
Exactly. Can I piggyback off of that too? I highly recommend any listeners, don't do things on the fly if you are working with someone to edit your podcast episodes, let's say your podcast episode comes out tomorrow and you edit it, you record it today. Don't expect somebody just to be like, oh yeah, I can drop everything and edit this for you and have it posted tomorrow. There is beauty in at least planning. You don't have to plan out 3 months in advance. Sometimes I can get that way, and it can be a little overwhelming for somebody who wants to learn how to plan out, but just 3 months in advance may be too much. So I recommend starting off at least 1 month. Looking over your calendar and seeing, okay, what type of content, the content in this case is the podcast, episodes should I be creating that my audience needs to hear to be led closer to my services, to be led closer to my education, to be what is the purpose of your podcast? Hopefully it's to lead others to trust you and to get to know more of your business. And so plan out content at least for 1 month. And that's 4 episodes. And then give whoever plenty of time to edit, or if you are editing, give yourself plenty of time to edit. Don't do things on the fly because that also is where the inconsistency will happen. And I will say this, I have a YouTube channel and I'm in a developing a system for that. And I'm hitting walls with finding consistency in recording videos. I can do so well for weeks at a time. And then there's 1 or 2 weeks where I'm throwing something together or not doing anything at all. So I'm still in that phase of figuring out a consistent workflow.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a very good point about being consistent. Yeah, and not just expecting to have an editor to be able to just edit there and
Yeah,
then.
exactly.
I've been known to have, I think I've done 11 episodes in advance, have that many up my sleeve.
Yeah,
But
that's really good.
yeah, I think that was probably a bit too much for me at the time because I was just recording. I think I did maybe 3 or 4 interviews a week and then just had all of this editing to do. But I do like to think, 4 weeks in advance is good because it kind of gives you a little bit of a buffer as well. If
Yeah.
something happens, you've still got, 2 episodes in the can and you can just pick up again.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that I have definitely recorded so many episodes in advance it was kind of to my detriment, if I'm using the term correctly, because I should have only done 4 to 5 because things will come up in business or with something to do with education. And it would have been really good to make an episode that could have educated somebody that it would impact them in real time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. If you put yourself too far ahead, you miss out on other opportunities.
Exactly. So there's this fine balance and this fine walk. And I'm still learning it.
Yeah. I think that's the good thing though about podcasting is that we're all still learning. No matter how many
Yeah.
years you've been going for, how many episodes you've got out, there's always something that you can learn and apply to how you do things.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And can you tell us more about your podcast and your services, Dolly? Because you have got so much to offer us that I think it would be remiss of me to not talk about this.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, so the Systems and Workflow Magic podcast is a weekly podcast that comes out every Monday, and it talks about systems, workflows, and SOPs. And I like to treat every podcast episode like a mini masterclass, and it feels like you're jumping into a paid masterclass, which I love. And it's normally me interviewing another expert on something very specific. So I'm not a ClickUp expert, for example. So I've had ClickUp experts break down ClickUp, or I'm not a HoneyBook expert. So I've reached out to HoneyBook experts. So I try to find people who can break down and simplify certain apps or systems or workflows so that creative minded business owners can take that and start applying it to their business. And again, I've been doing this. I started in 2021 and I'm still going strong with it, which I really love. I love podcasting so much. It's helped me meet a lot of people like you, for example, Allison. And I didn't realize how much I would love doing podcasting. I'm blubbering right now. So sorry, but it's been a fun adventure and it's showed me the power of just building relationships, and then the world is more smaller than you think. You can be connected with everyone all over the world, which I love. And so within my business, like I had mentioned earlier, I have 2 sides to my business: family photography, and then am a systems and workflow educator. So what that means is my free side is podcasting and YouTube. But my paid services include, I love helping business owners out with launches. So, and I especially love specializing in the pre-launch phase. So helping business owners get their content ready to have a really good pre-launch runway, to prime their audience, and then to not put a launch and throw it out in last minute, throw spaghetti at the wall. I don't want that to happen. So I normally am helping out clients for 3 months at a time. And so we work together for 3 months and then we launch within an 8 to 12 week period. And it's so nice and fun to see those aha moments in clients and to also see like their email lists grow and them to launch like a group program or a digital product really well and not so scattered. And I love doing that. And I have digital courses to help get started with systems and workflows. And yeah, I love talking about systems and workflows and how to just simplify the back end of your business.
Who would have thought that, 4 or 5 years ago that this is where you'd be today?
Right. No, I never would have realized that. And it's something like, even though, 2020 sucked on so many levels, I'm very grateful that this door opened for me because I really firmly believe like this is one of my strengths is just helping business owners get more organized at the back end. So it's just like their content and their launch plans are more planned out, well thought out, and just like everything flows together well.
Mhm. Tell us where we can find you, Dolly. I will put links in the show notes, but for those who are, maybe at their keyboard right now, able to type things in.
Yeah, definitely. So if you're on Instagram, you can find me on Instagram at Dolly DeLong Education. And then I'm also online, systems and workflowmagic.com. And there you can find like all my systems and workflow education and also my podcast as well.
Yeah, so subscribe to that one too, especially if you don't have any systems in place.
Yeah, thank you so much again for having me. It was very lovely meeting you and talking with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dolly. And who would have thought that talking about systems such as email workflows could actually be quite, joyful?
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun, everyone. You are going to have so much fun. Make sure to message Allison and let her know, like, if you've taken action, because I want you to take action.
Cool. Thank you so much again, Dolly. This has been so fun.
Thanks so much, Dolly, for coming on and sharing the systems that help you and your business and how we might use systems in our podcast and associated businesses. You can find links to Dolly and her offerings in the show notes, where I've also linked to some of my favorite episodes of hers. If you've liked this episode, I would love it if you could please give me a review in your podcast app. That's it from me, and I'll see you again soon. You've been listening to Women Who Podcast, the podcast for women with something to say.